like, it's a rom-com. So it's a hot, like suspiciously hot Greenpeace activist who is down on his luck and very anxious, like so many, millennial and Gen Z people are super anxious about climate anxiety. And, he's at a protest one day and he announces on live television that he's going to set himself on fire if big oil doesn't take responsibility for their crimes. In comes his, the female love interest, the lover for the film, and she's a hot PR executive, and she's tasked by big oil to bring, Ravi to the dark side so that they don't have a martyr on their hands. Because the last thing that big oil, this is just how it operates in real life, the last thing that big oil wants is
Today we brought on a special guest from the film industry, actress, screenwriter, and producer Kim Steele, also the founder of Documentaries Don't Work. Her venture brings climate awareness to mainstream audiences through narrative-based films that involve cross-pollination of industries, sustainable film sets, and leverages Hollywood's massive cultural impact. Previously, Kim wrote for various films including Maniac and Station 11. Kim is also an actress and is in Tyler Perry's latest film, Duplicity. Today's conversation covers Hollywood and climate solutions, where Kim and I discuss sustainable practices in the film industry, innovative climate storytelling techniques, and the impact of production partnerships. This is Earth UBC, featuring Kim Steele.
So this is a particularly special conversation today because we have a filmmaker in our midst. Thanks for joining us, Kim.
Really excited to be here. Super excited to have a different type of conversation than what I'm used to having.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna get swinging right off the bat. What the hell does filmmaking got to do with climate change and sustainability innovation?
That's an excellent question, and one that I have been ruminating on for about 2-3 years now. Basically, the whole objective of this endeavor to bring together climate tech and climate solutions with filmmaking is just cross-pollination, right? Like Hollywood is extremely unsustainable, and there's so much opportunity to make things more sustainable on set and, on screen, which is where I jump in, climate storytelling and stuff. And so this conversation with you, even though no one watching this is probably a filmmaker, there's tons of opportunity for people who are working in climate solutions outside of Hollywood to bring their talents to Hollywood. So when you say, what does filmmaking and storytelling have to do with climate change? I was at Climate Week last year, and this is how this idea really started to kick off. And I went around asking, people, because these are all the climate professionals from all around the world, to name a climate documentary. Oof. And hilariously, no one could. So I'm going to put you on the spot right now and ask you to name a climate documentary, Sean.
Okay. I only know this because we talked about it before. Don't Look Up. It was this indie satire. It featured like Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, and Timothée Chalamet. If you didn't mention that to me, I would have just been fumbling, trying to pull something up. But yeah, I think otherwise I wouldn't have known.
So here's the funny thing. It's like Don't Look Up is a narrative film. It's not even a documentary. So the one climate documentary you can name is not a documentary. And by documentary, for people who are watching, maybe don't know the difference, a documentary is something that's nonfiction, and then narrative, the narrative space, the space that I live in, is fiction. And so nobody can name a climate documentary, right? But everyone can name their favorite film. So I just thought to myself, instead of all of the philanthropy, all of the resources, all of the support for the past few decades going into the documentary space, and literally no one can name one, we should just infuse climate communications into regular films, and regular films that will reach a broader audience and get people to start talking about climate in America, like the culture, shifting the culture of climate via narrative storytelling. So that's the endeavor. That's what we're doing here.
Right. And I love how your endeavor, the name of it is Documentaries Don't Work. And that's pretty much like what you picked up and what you were just explaining, and how your focus on narratives then pretty much addresses all the issues that like these documentaries aren't as effective in getting like the message across, as opposed to like a narrative that gets people like talking. It's like a buzz, and eventually it'll have ripple effects in what's happening like on set and on screen. So I think it's great. In terms of like Hollywood, as like a vehicle for climate solution adoption. What is your take on that?
Yeah, so I, since I work on screen, I'm sort of just a mouthpiece for things that happen in the production set. Like I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also a producer. So while my main focus is the story and the cast and getting the production up and going, another big part of my job is what goes on set, right? And so if I'm going to be a sustainable producer, I don't want to have a diesel generator, I don't want to have fast fashion that we throw into a landfill after we're done. I don't want to use plastic water bottles on set. I want a water solution. If possible, I don't want a fleet of the transportation vehicles that get all the props and the sets to location. I don't want those to be diesel, or gas. I would like them to be electric, but so far we don't have the capabilities of having a portable electric charging station that I can cart out to the middle of the desert with me, pack it back up when the shoot is over, and then give it to somebody else or put it in storage or save it for later. We don't have, I don't even know if we have like portable water bottle stations to bring out into, the middle of the desert. And so I think when a lot of people think about Hollywood, they're thinking about the big studios who shoot in their studio on location, or Warner Brothers, Amazon, all these people, they have their own sets built out, but the rest of us we're shooting out in the wild, we're shooting on locations, and so my call to action is for people who are working on some sort of solution that could be shoehorned into a Hollywood film set to maybe think about Hollywood as a place to deploy their solutions. Oh, and another big area is electrification. Like so far, renewable energy is not a thing when it comes to solar, because it all has to be mobile if we're doing it in the middle of nowhere. And we all still use diesel generators to power night shoots. So anything that's shot at night or overnight is diesel generators. And I can't believe no one has invented a battery yet, but hopefully somebody listening to this conversation, it can get their wheels turning for something like that.
Yeah, so you just threw out a couple of startup ideas. Maybe someone can latch on to it. Maybe there's a pivot, I don't know, but there's a lot of opportunity, it seems, for mobile energy sources for these on-site and off-site shoots.
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. One thing that you mentioned in one of our prior conversations was, I'm putting you on the spot here. It's a little controversial of a statement, but you said Hollywood has 100x impact than a lab in Connecticut. What exactly does this 100x impact look like to you?
So for me, when I say Hollywood has a huge impact, I'm talking just culturally, period, in America. Hollywood is one of the biggest industries globally that the genesis is here for, production is here in America. And what I mean by that is like even countries that have other really robust film industries like Korea, India, 60-70% of their box office revenue is American films, like in Hollywood. So people are watching. Isn't that wild? I didn't even know that until I was like doing research for this conversations that I'm having. But like people in other countries depend on Hollywood for their film industries. And so like when you talk about like the Oscars, like I can't name maybe a film that was popular at the Berlin Film Festival. I'm sure there are some good ones, but people in Berlin can name films from the Oscars, and so we have this outsized impact in Hollywood, and it's just being underutilized in terms of on screen representing what climate solutions actually look like. And so, for example, let's say the latest Marvel film has a scene that's in a kitchen and they're using gas stoves. That's fine. Plenty of houses in America have gas stoves, but not as many movies or films and TVs depict like not gas stoves as there are, like electric stoves as there are. So there's this group called Rewiring America that is basically trying to get film and TV productions to accurately represent how many induction stoves there are in people's houses in America. Because if you watch TV today, it makes it look like there aren't any, but really there are quite a few. And so Hollywood has a responsibility, from my point of view, to accurately depict what is going on in the kitchens of houses. But, there's the narrative of Gordon Ramsay and his big, huge flame and how exciting that is. And oil out, this is a topic for another conversation, but oil and gas has done an incredible job of storytelling about, their endeavor to have everything be oil and gas. They've made oil and gas super cool with Yellowstone and Landman and cooking shows where there's gas and blah, blah, blah. So we need to do what they've been doing for 100 years and make it really cool to electrify and to be sustainable and to use solar. So that's where I think Hollywood can have that impact, because around the globe, all eyes are on American movies.
You did not spare any feelings right there. I definitely do see now like the really huge, I guess, global market share that Hollywood has, and so there's, in your view, there's like a responsibility for Hollywood to have like very little details placed, like you mentioned with the stoves, for it to be like maybe electrical, have it be representative of kind of like the world that we're heading in today, or the world that we want to see. It's like details like these, but I also want to question like how much do these little details add up and bring to the surface like purchasing decisions by the consumer?
Right. So to answer that question, I'm going to give you an example of something that Hollywood made and then Hollywood destroyed, just Hollywood alone. And that is smoking cigarettes. So smoking cigarettes became popular with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall in Casablanca. They were sexy. They had switched from silent pictures to talking pictures. And so we needed, to give people something to do with their hands, so that coincided with making smoking really popular. And so flash forward to the 90s, we can confirm that smoking will give you lung cancer. And so now you don't see a cigarette. When's the last time you saw a cigarette on TV, when cigarettes used to be in everybody's hands on TV? So that's an example about how this is a health agenda, but how there is an agenda that was born and then died via Hollywood. And so my, plan is to do the same thing with things like renewable energy and stoves and whatever. Like the more we see them normalized, the more they sort of infuse themselves into the culture.
Gotcha. So I'd really love to talk about Happy Burn Day, so the film that you're making right now, and how, like, first, like, what exactly is Happy Burn Day? Like, what is the plot? What is the storyline? But also, how are you infusing like these elements of climate into that? I know that there's very much heavy implication on big oil and like sustainability within the plot itself, but other elements that you're baking into this film. I'd love to hear about that.
Yes, of course. I love to talk about this film. I'm really excited about it. So Happy Burn Day is a climate rom-com feature. So the story is about a climate activist who falls in love with a PR rep for big oil, which complicates his plans to self-immolate. So it's the classic enemies to lovers. It's supposed to be funny. Like it's not super deep. We're not preaching to people about climate change, which is a big goal of mine. We're just inviting people to watch a rom-com that happens to be the backdrop of a climate case or whatever. So in the story, we have a character that we can all recognize. Like, it's a rom-com. So it's a hot, like suspiciously hot Greenpeace activist who is down on his luck and very anxious, like so many, millennial and Gen Z people are super anxious about climate anxiety. And, he's at a protest one day and he announces on live television that he's going to set himself on fire if big oil doesn't take responsibility for their crimes. In comes his, the female love interest, the lover for the film, and she's a hot PR executive, and she's tasked by big oil to bring, Ravi to the dark side so that they don't have a martyr on their hands. Because the last thing that big oil, this is just how it operates in real life, the last thing that big oil wants is a good story that counters their story. So we're just following. This is like a regular, like straight to streaming Netflix, like turn it on when you're doing something else or if you have nothing else to do. We're not trying to change the world with this. We're just trying to lay the groundwork for how every climate story doesn't need to be Don't Look Up or Paradise or Twisters. Like right now, the dominant narrative of climate communications on screen is doom and gloom. Everything is a disaster story, which is, to be expected because disaster keeps the stakes high. It raises the stakes when it comes to a film. And so it's sort of an easy jump, but I challenged myself to find some other way to communicate about climate that wasn't disaster. And I landed on my favorite genre, which is rom-com.
Mhm. And I'm also a sucker for a good rom-com, so there's definitely many more than just you and me. I know a lot of other people as well. And Don't Look Up, I think has also proven that there is an appetite for like this climate theme, like dark comedy, but just in general, like something that is related to climate, to some degree. But I also want to know, like, how can these like climate tech companies then partner with you or like be a part of these like films that are more climate and sustainability conscious?
Sure. So I'll talk about my big picture vision, and then I'll talk about stuff that's a little bit more granular. But in terms of the big picture, I'm envisioning a new model, financial model, because indie filmmaking is, or you may not know, indie filmmaking is always like one step away from not existing anymore for financial reasons or whatever. And so I'm envisioning a model where there is a symbiotic relationship between climate solutions and climate films. And by that, I mean climate entrepreneurs, equity invest in climate films, and then the returns from those box office successes funnel back into the climate solutions of the climate project. So I'm envisioning a wheel here where we either use IRA tax credits or like some other creative way that we can have a consistent funnel for getting these films made, because that's the big thing right now. Like we're all, we have Hollywood Climate Summit, we have the Green Production Guide, everybody's talking about it, but Don't Look Up came out 4 years ago and there hasn't been a film since. So I'm just sort of like, which to your point, Don't Look Up is Netflix's second most viewed film of all time, which is in 174 million views, which is insane to me that a film that was so popular that everyone was talking about hasn't been replicated since. So I'm trying to walk the walk here and get this film up and running so that it can be a proof of concept for other people who may want to, jump on board this. So that's the big way that I envision climate tech and climate films working symbiotically. But in terms of from, organization to organization, the one thing is whether my film or some other indie filmmaker that's in your town, deploying your solution on their set. So if you're working on something that is ready to be tested, indie filmmakers love testing things because number one, we don't have money. So we love, if you want to test your portable EV charging station, come on over. We'll find a way to make it happen. Like if you have a water solution or even things like data or like getting rid of, I'm trying to find a way to get rid of all the scripts and all the paper that runs around on set. So if you're building something, some AI, something that you think can get rid of the paper on set, I would love to test that out when I'm ready to shoot my film. So depending on what state you're in, lots of states have amazing tax credits. Almost every state has some sort of film commission. Reach out to them, see if they know of anybody who is ready to shoot this year or early next year, and reach out to that filmmaker and let them know what you're doing. And the more of us, it can't just be my film. So the more of us that do this across the country, it'll begin to pick up steam.
Yeah, for sure.
And then of course, there's also, if you got something that's ready and you want it to be seen on camera, that's also something that I'm open to in a symbiotic relationship. If you got a self-driving car, maybe I'll reach out to Waymo and be like, hey, do you want to put a self-driving car in our film, or something like that. So if you're building something and you want it to be seen, because that's the other thing about, I think one of the issues with climate tech is I only know what's happening in the climate tech world because I'm so adjacent to it. The average American has no idea what's going on, what's being built, what are the types of things that people are working on. And so even just having your thing being seen on screen, whether it's an actor interacting with it or whether it just sits in the background, like we have to begin to get eyes on what's going on in the climate tech world, the sustainability world. And so large scale films that go out to, theaters and are in festivals and people ask questions about them, actors do interviews about them. It's a good way to get eyes on climate solutions.
Mhm. Most definitely. I love how indie filmmakers, like they're very open to trying new things, especially because it's discounted or free. And for these like startups who are looking for like pilot partners,
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity for them to get real world data and feedback from providing like onset opportunities for maybe reducing energy costs, maybe electrifying like their energy versus like the generators that you're talking about. So that's a great opportunity and call to action for some climate tech founders. So that's
Yeah.
a great idea there. And I know you have a 501c3 to accept donations to help fund this film that you're making. Um, Other than funding, who would you like help from, and what kind of help is and will be the most assisted for you?
I think probably just um I'd be looking for partners on like to pilot on set so that when I'm going out and talking about my film, because, I could just make this film the regular way, approach indie filmmakers who fund films, attach a couple A-listers or B-listers to it, and just shoot it, like raise $2.5, $3 million and shoot it. And that's one way to go about it. But I really want this to be a proof of concept for a sustainable indie film. Because right now, the only films or TV shows that are really making gains in sustainability are the studio films and the HBOs, the Amazon. But I want this to be an example of how to do it for people in the $2-3 million film budget. Which if you're unfamiliar, that's an ultra low budget film.
Mhm.
Like that's just barely a film that is watchable. So yeah, anybody who is working on something and just wants to start the conversation, that would be really helpful to me so that I can start to, when I'm having conversations like this or having conversations with other industry people who are asking me what I'm doing, I can say, these are the people I have on my team who are willing to come in, can you throw us a little cash so that we can make this a reality? And so it helps to have people on my team and people supporting this film who I can point to and say, this person wants to deploy their electric vehicle solutions. Can you give us some cash so that we can make it happen? Thanks. And to your point, the 501c3 takes the risk of this sort of thing down. So because it's a climate film, like people who are, maybe want to get involved with something like this, their return on their investment is that they can immediately write it off 100% of it. So that makes it a very attractive proposition, I think.
Mhm. Yeah. And one thing that I picked up is that in the climate industry, a lot of folks are very mission driven. So I really like the fact that during the actual production of your film, you're surrounding yourself with these like suppliers that are in the climate tech space. And then there are definitely investors out there in the climate tech space that would love to potentially expand maybe their areas of interest, areas of investment to something like this, where you're trying to educate more people, but in a entertainment angle. And I think that's really powerful there. Um, I imagine that there's been a disconnect in the past between like climate storytelling and education with the actual filming in Hollywood. Um, has there been like a film that's kind of failed and what you personally took away in terms of learnings?
I would say, and not to put this film on blast, but Twisters last summer was not disappointing when it came to the climate education. Like it's hard to not think about climate when it's a film about, extra scary tornadoes, 100 extra scary tornadoes coming out of nowhere at once. But then there were people who creatively were at the helm of the film who were talking to the reporter and saying, this isn't a climate film per se. We don't want to go there. We don't want to preach to people. And I just think that is the last thing that film needed, because we don't have hardly any representations of, natural disasters. It's tough when, one of the two instances that came out last year went on and said, but this isn't a climate film. This has nothing to do with climate. It's just entertainment. And so I think my goal is going to be to prove that climate education and entertainment are not mutually exclusive. So you actually don't need to go on and say, but this isn't about climate change. It's just fun. They can be the same thing, So, and climate comms is something that is really important. Like even in the Paris Agreement, there was, an article that was about Article 12A or something like that, that was about the responsibility of governments to let the people know about climate solutions and climate change. And I think that that is probably the biggest area where everyone has dropped the ball, because who even knows, and of course the ball has been dropped in many areas of the Paris Agreement, but I think that that one is especially egregious, because climate education right now looks like elementary school field trips. And it's like, no, like we need the general population to have a grasp on solutions and like the current reality. And that's where I think that blockbuster Hollywood films, not necessarily disaster films, because like you said, Don't Look Up, that's not the current reality. There isn't a meteor hurling towards us right now. However, there are real pressing issues that, we could stand to have some more attention in a film. I'd like not to talk about Happy Birthday, but it was born out of the idea of this court case that's happening, the people of California versus big oil right now. Like that is where Ravi, my character, does his big exclamation about, setting himself on fire, is at that court case. So my goal is that somebody watching this Googles afterwards, is that a real court case? And finds out that it is. And that the state of California is suing big oil, and that there is a way for them to get involved in it, and there are other states who are doing it as well. So just putting in little nuggets here and there so that hopefully people will watch it and then go be like, oh, is that really happening? And then find out that it is.
Yeah. Definitely having like these aspects of like climate, and then also just like the story of the film, and really standing firm, like these two things can be married together and they can work well together, I think, is really important to kind of accept and acknowledge, and then really roll with in terms of the filmmaking process. And I like the aspect of filming in the same courthouse as the case that's happening right now. So it's like when I see something in a film and it piques my interest, I'm Googling that, I'm searching it up, trying to learn more. And the fact that it's real, that's happening in our present day, I think makes it even more interesting. And oftentimes when a film makes me think, and I'm watching with my friends, after the film ends, we start talking about it. We try to analyze what's happened, even if it's like a Marvel film, like why did this character do X, Y, Z? So it's a really cool thing to see, like, okay, this can apply to climate and more people will know, especially because globally we know how important it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got it.
So what's the what are the next steps for you? What does the next, I guess, 1-2 years look like?
Yeah, so first things first is getting Happy Birthday shot, edited, finished, off to the festivals, or, bought by a streaming service or something. So I'm working on this film, but also, collecting other projects to work on. So I'm reaching out to, writers that I know who are very talented, may have some scripts, and you know what I'm saying to them? I would love to like take this on and produce this. Can you just put some climate stuff in it here and there? And then I will take this on and, use because that was the thing with the 501c3 is, the mission of the organization is to produce climate films, like as educational climate films. So we're not doing anything that's not a climate film. So part of my value proposition to indie filmmakers, or over the next few years, who may want or indie screenwriters who may want their film produced, is I'm saying, hey, yeah, this is a great script. I love it. You're a talented writer. I'm willing to produce it, but you need to put some climate elements in it. And so that's something, because, every screenwriter wants their film produced. So I'm just going to threaten them and say do this, but make it more climate. So there's that. And then, part of the other mission of my 501c3 is to, without having documentaries, sort of get conversations going about the things that we see in our film. So after Happy Birthday happens, great. We all watched it on Netflix. We liked it. What's next? I want to make sure that conversations keep going. And so, there are ways to do impact campaigns to like get people together in different cities, different demographics, and start talking about climate. And, it's sad, but the 501c3 part was born out of, I tried to hold a screening in Atlanta. I was like, for my first event, it'll be a screening in Atlanta with like, Atlanta's full of Black people, and I want to help, bolster climate communications within the Black community. So why don't I have a screening of a climate film featuring a Black cast, and then we'll all just talk about it at the end with my friend from the EPA. And that'll be the talk back, and it'll be great. Do you know I could not find a film that fits those parameters? A climate film with a Black cast in it. Couldn't find one. So that was the thing. I was like, it's just not in the culture. And I want to bring it to my own culture. And so with Happy Burn Day, having a Black female lead, hopefully this is a film that, I can kick off that sort of impact arm. Is now I can gather all of my friends and, our acquaintances, Black people in Atlanta, have a screening and talk about it with my friend from the EBA, because they're watching themselves on the screen, which is important. It's important. And also it's just what people want. Like Tyler Perry is extremely popular. For example, every time he drops a film, Black Twitter goes insane. And it's the only thing we're talking about for 2 weeks. Imagine if a character in the Tyler Perry world had anything to do with climate, like the lawyer, was an environmental lawyer or something. Like, it will have an effect. People will start talking about whatever it is that he's doing. And so hopefully with this first film, I just begin to encourage people in my community to start talking about climate.
Mm-hmm. And representation is a huge factor in getting people to talk. 'Cause it's like they see themselves in the character or something, some aspect of the film, and then it gets them thinking, it gets them talking, especially with other people that also relate to that representation.
Yeah.
I want to leave off with one last question, and it's related to you being a screenwriter. So if you had a microphone that could broadcast a message to the world for 5 seconds, what would you say?
We're all gonna die. No,
that would definitely get their attention. That's a good hook.
That's the climate messaging that I love, is that we're all going to die, but it's not effective. So we have to stop saying it. So I would unfortunately resist saying that one. I think that I would say we're all in this together, because that is very hopeful. And that is the whole point of what I'm doing, is using my field as a filmmaker to bring everyone who may be interested together on climate. So that's the message that I would put out there, is we're all in this together. So instead of us all working on it separately and never talking to each other about it, let's have a film project, and everyone, people in policy, people in research and development, people in climate tech, come together and make this film.
Gotcha. Filmmaker, actress, and screenwriter Kim, thank you so much for the time to kind of talk us through your Happy Burn Day film, overall what you're doing with Documentaries Don't Work, and just how exactly Hollywood can kind of be more climate or pro-climate and things like that. So really appreciate the time that you took today.
This has been such a fun conversation, and thank you for inviting me to dive into this seemingly unrelated conversation, but we found the threads, and that's really, really exciting to me. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this interview, follow along on Earth ABC's LinkedIn to stay connected and never miss what's going on in climate tech. If you'd like to reach out or you're interested in coming on as a guest, feel free to connect with me, Sean Pack, on LinkedIn. We're always looking for inspiring ventures and founders in the climate space to feature on the show. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time.